The clockwork garden in the heart of a quiet village, surrounded by rolling green hills, there was a garden unlike any other. The villagers called it the Clockwork Garden, for it was filled not only with flowers and trees, but with tiny gears, springs, and delicate mechanisms that moved on their own. The garden ticked and whirred softly, as if it had a heartbeat. A curious boy named Jasper loved exploring the garden. He would spend hours examining the tiny brass flowers, listening to the soft ticking of mechanical butterflies, and watching miniature windmills spin in perfect harmony. The villagers thought it was strange, but Jasper believed the garden was alive, holding secrets only a patient heart could discover. One afternoon, Jasper noticed that one of the larger clockwork trees had stopped moving. Its branches, which usually swayed gracefully, hung still. The little gears at its base had jammed, and the ticking that filled the garden grew faint. Concerned, Jasper examined the tree. He discovered a small keyhole hidden among the roots. On the ground lay a tiny brass key, glowing faintly in the sunlight. Without hesitation, Jasper inserted the key into the keyhole and turned it. The gears began to move slowly at first. Then, with a smooth, flowing rhythm, the branches swayed, and tiny flowers unfurled, releasing a soft, melodic chime. But this was only the beginning. As the tree came to life, the rest of the garden responded. The clockwork butterflies fluttered faster, the miniature windmills spun brighter, and a gentle hum filled the air. Jasper realized that the garden wasn't just a collection of mechanical wonders, it was a living symphony, where every piece depended on the others. Curious to learn more, Jasper explored deeper. He found tiny doors in the soil, leading to hidden chambers where gears turned like waterfalls. Springs bounced like clouds, and small clocks counted the moments of the garden's life. He discovered that each mechanism represented something important: a happy memory, a kind act, a dream someone had wished for. Suddenly, a soft voice echoed through the garden. The garden thrives on care, attention, and love. Every tick, every turn, every bloom is alive because someone believes in it. Jasper realized that the garden needed more than just winding. It needed understanding. He began to tend it carefully, oiling the tiny gears, fixing the springs, and listening to the soft ticks. He whispered encouragement to the flowers and leaves, and slowly, the garden became more vibrant than ever. Word of Jasper's care spread through the village. Children came to help, turning gears, planting seeds, and learning to listen to the garden's heartbeat. The adults, too, began to notice how alive it felt, how every mechanical movement mirrored moments of love and joy in their own lives. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Jasper realized something extraordinary. The garden had begun to create its own wonders. Tiny mechanical birds sang songs that mirrored the laughter of the children. Flowers bloomed in patterns that told stories of bravery, kindness, and imagination. Even the windmills moved in rhythms that seemed to echo the villagers' hearts. Jasper understood then that the clockwork garden was not just a place of machines, it was a reflection of everyone who nurtured it. The garden and the people grew together, each tick and turn teaching patience, care, and the magic of attention to detail. From that day on, Jasper became the guardian of the clockwork garden. Every morning, he tended it carefully, sharing its lessons with anyone who visited. And every night, as the gears ticked softly and the mechanical flowers swayed in the moonlight, the villagers knew that a little care, a little attention, and a lot of love could make even the most unusual places come alive. Moral of the story: care, attention, and love bring life to the world around us. Even small acts of kindness can make the most extraordinary things bloom. the island of singing shadows, far across the silver sea, there was an island that appeared only when the waves whispered its name. It was called the Island of Singing Shadows, because the shadows there could sing, telling stories of faraway lands, forgotten dreams, and secret wishes. A brave girl named Amara had always loved tales of mysterious islands. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity, and she carried a small lantern wherever she went, to light her path in the darkest places. One moonlit night, guided by the glimmer of starlight on the sea, she set sail in a small boat, determined to discover the island for herself. As she approached, she saw the shadows before she saw the land. They danced on the waves, twirling gracefully, creating melodies that filled the night air. Amara's heart raced with wonder. The shadows didn't frighten her. Instead, they seemed to invite her closer. When she stepped onto the shore, the shadows swirled round her feet, singing softly, "Welcome, seeker of stories. Welcome, bearer of light. Here, the songs of all who came before shall guide you." Amara listened closely. Each shadow told a story. Some sang of courage, of battles fought with kindness. Others whispered tales of friendship, love, and hope that had never faded. The shadows were alive with memory, emotion, and magic. She wandered deeper into the island, following the music of the shadows. The forest ahead shimmered with lights that flickered like fireflies, guiding her path. There were trees with leaves that hummed in harmony, flowers that swayed to the rhythm of the songs, and streams whose waters carried the echoes of laughter from distant lands. Amara realized that the shadows were not simply reflections of objects, they were reflections of hearts and deeds. Every act of kindness, every brave moment, every dream carried by someone somewhere had formed these singing shadows. As she walked, a large shadow approached her. Unlike the others, it was still, silent, and deep as midnight. It spoke in a voice that rumbled like distant thunder. To hear the greatest song, you must add your own light. Share what is in your heart, and the shadows shall sing with you. Amara thought carefully. She remembered the times she had helped friends, the moments she had been brave despite fear, and the dreams she held close. She lifted her lantern and sang softly, pouring her heart into the melody. The shadow listened, then began to move, swirling in patterns that reflected the rhythm of her song. Soon, all the shadows joined, their voices blending into a chorus more beautiful than anything Amara had ever heard. The island pulsed with music, waves carrying the song across the sea. Even the stars seemed to twinkle in time with the melody. Amara felt joy and courage fill her chest. She understood that the power of the island was not in its magic alone, but in the hearts of those willing to contribute their own light and song. When it came time to leave, Amara promised the island she would return, bringing her stories, her dreams, and her courage. The shadows whispered their thanks, fading gently into the night, leaving the shore peaceful and quiet. Back in her village, Amara shared the story of the Island of Singing Shadows. Children were inspired to act kindly and bravely, knowing that even small deeds could create lasting songs in the world. Adults remembered forgotten dreams and found courage to pursue them again. And when the moon rose full over the silver sea, Amara would look toward the horizon, imagining the shadows twirling and singing. A reminder that every act of kindness and every dream carried light, and that the song of the world is richer when every heart adds its own voice. Moral of the story: every kind act, every brave choice, and every dream contributes to the beauty and harmony of the world. When we share our hearts, we make life sing. The sky painter, high above the quiet town of Arendelle, there lived a boy named Orion who could paint the sky. No one knew how he had discovered this gift, not even Orion himself. Each morning, he would climb the tallest hill with his brushes, jars of colors, and a palette filled with shades no one had ever seen before. Orion didn't paint clouds like ordinary clouds, nor did he create sunsets that merely glowed orange or pink. He painted emotions into the sky. When people felt joy, the sky shimmered with gold and lilac. When sorrow touched the hearts below, soft blues and silvers appeared, wrapping the town in comfort. The villagers were unaware of Orion's gift. They admired the beauty of the skies, but did not know that the colors were a reflection of their own feelings, and that Orion worked tirelessly each day to bring hope, peace, and happiness to them. One morning, Orion noticed something unusual. A gray haze lingered across the horizon, refusing to fade. It felt heavy, sad, and cold. He realized that the villagers had been carrying worries and fears, many unspoken, for far too long. Determined, he set up his brushes and began to work. He mixed the colors carefully, a soft pink for courage, a golden hue for hope, and a deep violet for love. As he painted, the gray haze resisted, swirling like a storm cloud. Orion paused, realizing that the sky could not be changed with colors alone. It needed something more: connection, understanding, and heart. He climbed down the hill and walked through the town, speaking to everyone he met. He listened to their fears, encouraged their dreams, and reminded them of their own strengths. As he did, he returned to the hill, painting again. Slowly, the haze softened, and the town below seemed to breathe with relief. But the most remarkable change happened when Orion allowed the villagers to paint alongside him. Children mixed colors gleefully. Parents contributed shades that reflected memories of love and joy. And even the elderly added quiet, wise tones that shimmered like starlight. Together, they painted not just the sky, but their hearts. The gray haze melted completely, replaced by a brilliant tapestry of colors that danced and shifted like living light. Sunsets glowed with warmth that seemed to touch every home, every garden, and every path. The villagers stepped outside, gazing upward in awe, feeling emotions they had almost forgotten: joy, hope, courage, and connection. Orion smiled, realizing that the sky could not be painted alone. It was a reflection of the hearts below. Each day, he continued to climb the hill, painting and guiding, but he never painted alone. The villagers joined him, sharing the gift of colors and learning that when hearts work together, even the heaviest storms can be transformed into beauty. Years later, when Orion was older, the town of Arendelle became famous for its skies. Travelers came from far away to see the colors and to feel the magic in the air. But the true magic remained a secret. It was not only in the paints or the brushes, but in every kind word, every act of courage, and every shared moment that lit the hearts of those who lived below. And at night, when the stars filled the sky, Orion would dip his brush into silver and starlight, painting dreams into the heavens for every child who looked up and believed that magic and hope was always within reach. Moral of the story: when we share our hearts, kindness, and courage, we can brighten the world around us. True magic comes from connection and hope. The island of dancing lights, far beyond the shores of the known seas, sailors whispered of an island that appeared only when the sky was clear and the moon was full. It was called the Island of Dancing Lights, for hundreds of glowing orbs floated above its forests, hills, and rivers, twirling and spinning as if they were alive. A brave boy named Kian had always been fascinated by stories of the island. He loved adventures and often imagined discovering new lands filled with wonders. One night, when the moon hung high and silver over the ocean, Kian set sail in a small wooden boat, guided only by the shimmering path of moonlight across the water. Hours passed, and the waves glimmered softly under the moon's glow. Then, far ahead, Keon saw faint lights flickering above the horizon. His heart leaped. Could this be the island of dancing lights? As he drew closer, the lights grew brighter and began to swirl like a living dance. When his boat reached the shore, Keon stepped onto soft sand that glowed faintly with every footstep. The island was alive, the lights moving rhythmically, forming patterns that told stories of joy, friendship, and courage. Keon wandered through the forests, marveling at the glowing flowers and trees, whose leaves sparkled like crystals. The lights seemed to guide him, floating ahead and then circling back to show him the way. He realized that each light represented a dream, a hope, or a memory, flickering gently in the night. In the heart of the island, he found a crystal-clear lake. The dancing lights gathered above it, reflecting in the water like stars mirrored on earth. Keon knelt by the lake, reaching out to touch the shimmering surface. As he did, a soft voice echoed around him. The lights dance for those who believe in the beauty of hope and the magic of dreams. Keon thought of all the times he had been afraid of failure, afraid of the unknown, afraid to share his dreams. He whispered to the lights, "I want to believe in myself and in the wonders of the world." The lights responded, spinning faster and brighter, filling the island with warmth. Keon felt courage bloom inside him, a feeling so strong that he wanted to laugh and sing. He realized that the island was teaching him that magic is not just in places, but in believing, in hope, in imagination, and in the goodness of one's heart. Night after night, Keon explored the island, learning from the lights. Some were shy, flickering softly, reminding him of quiet acts of kindness. Others blazed brilliantly, teaching him that courage and determination shine brightest when shared. The island became a classroom without walls, a place where dreams and lessons danced together in perfect harmony. When it came time to return home, Keon felt a bittersweet joy. The lights accompanied him to the shore, fading gently into the distance. Yet he carried their magic in his heart, promising to believe in hope and share it with others. Back in his village, Keon became a storyteller. He shared the lessons of the island of dancing lights with children and adults alike, teaching them that even the smallest hope can shine like a star, and that dreams, courage, and kindness can create a world full of wonder. And on clear nights, when the moon rose high, Keon would look out to the sea, imagining the lights twirling above the distant island. A reminder that magic exists wherever hearts dare to believe. Moral of the story: belief in hope, courage, and dreams can light even the darkest paths. Magic exists when we carry it in our hearts and share it with others. The secret of the moonflower: high atop the misty hills, there was a flower that bloomed only once a year under the light of a full moon. It was called the moonflower, and it was said that whoever witnessed its bloom would discover a secret that could change their life forever. A curious girl named Leora had heard tales of the moonflower since she was small. She had long golden hair that shone like sunlight and eyes full of wonder. Every year, she watched the hills from her bedroom window, hoping to catch a glimpse of the legendary bloom. This year, the full moon rose large and silver, casting its light across the hills. Leora could not resist. She packed a small bag with bread, water, and her grandmother's scarf, and tiptoed out of the house into the night. The path was winding and steep, but Leora's heart raced with excitement. As she reached the top, the hill seemed empty. Shadows stretched long under the moonlight, and the air smelled sweet and cool. Then she saw Ithamu. Its petals were pure white, glowing softly, and its center shimmered with a light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Leora knelt before it, awestruck. She reached out her hand, and the flower's glow intensified. wrapping her in a gentle warmth. Then a voice whispered, soft as the wind, "Those who seek with pure hearts shall learn the secret of the moon." Leora's breath caught. "What is your secret?" she asked. "The moonflower blooms for those who remember to look within themselves. The light you see is your own courage, hope, and love, reflected back to you. To understand the world, you must first understand your heart." Leora thought about the year she had spent worrying about school, about friends, about things she could not control. She realized that she had often looked outward for answers, forgetting the strength inside her. The moonflower glowed brighter as she spoke softly to it. "I will try to see my own light." Suddenly, the petals unfurled fully, releasing a wave of sparkling dust that swirled around her. Images appeared in the mist. Moments when she had been brave, times she had been kind, and instances when her laughter had brightened another's day. Leora understood that the moonflower had been showing her her own hidden strengths all along. As dawn approached, the moonflower slowly closed its petals, its glow fading. But Leora felt a new warmth in her heart, a quiet confidence that she could carry through all challenges. She made her way back down the hill, the morning sun painting the world in shades of gold and pink. When she returned to the village, Leora shared the story of the moonflower with anyone who would listen. Children gasped at the idea of a magical flower, and adults nodded knowingly, remembering times when they, too, had found light within themselves. From that night onward, Leora returned to the hills every year to witness the moonflower's bloom. Not just to see its magic, but to remind herself that the greatest light comes from within. And in the hearts of those who heard her tale, the moonflower's secret grew to teaching courage, hope, and love, silently, like petals unfolding under the moonlight. Moral of the story: true strength and courage come from within. By believing in ourselves and recognizing our own light, we can face any challenge. The bridge of starlight, far beyond the hills and rivers of the village of Leora, there was a mysterious bridge that appeared only at night. It was called the Bridge of Starlight, for its surface shimmered like the night sky, and stars seemed to dance along its edges. Villagers said it led to places that existed only in dreams, where magic and wonder were endless. A curious girl named Ellen had always dreamed of seeing the bridge. She loved the stars and often stayed awake long after bedtime, gazing at the heavens and imagining what lay beyond. One clear night, as the moon rose full and bright, she noticed a faint shimmer far across the valley. It pulsed gently, like a heartbeat in the darkness. Ellen's heart leaped. Could it be the legendary bridge? She ran through the fields, her feet barely touching the soft grass, until she reached the edge of the valley. There it was, the Bridge of Starlight, stretching from one hill to another, glowing with silver and blue light. As she stepped onto it, the stars beneath her feet felt warm and alive. With each step, the bridge seemed to carry her forward, as if it knew exactly where she wanted to go. Yet, halfway across, a voice called softly from the shimmering mist, "To cross the bridge, you must leave behind what weighs your heart." Ellen paused. "What do I have to leave behind?" she asked. "Fear, doubt, and worry," the voice replied. "Only then can you reach the places you truly dream of." Ellen thought of all the moments she had felt afraid of heights, of speaking in front of others, of failing at things she tried. She realized the voice was right. Slowly, she imagined each fear as a small stone she carried in her pocket. One by one, she set them down on the bridge. As she did, the stones melted into stardust, swirling around her feet. The bridge glowed brighter, guiding her forward. She walked with a lighter heart, feeling courage bloom inside her. Then, from the mist ahead, shapes began to emerge, beautiful places she had only imagined. Forests of glowing flowers, rivers of liquid silver, mountains that sparkled with gemstones. The bridge carried her toward them, step by step. Suddenly, a star flitted down from above and landed on her shoulder. It spoke in a voice like wind chimes. Every dream you hold in your heart can become real. The bridge shows you the way, but your courage lights the path. Ellen smiled, understanding that the journey was not about the bridge alone, but about believing in herself. She explored the magical lands that the bridge led to, discovering wonders beyond imagination. Creatures of light and shadow greeted her kindly. She learned songs of the stars, tasted fruits that sparkled like jewels, and danced among flowers that glowed with the moon's own silver. As dawn approached, the bridge began to fade. Ellen knew she had to return to the village, but she also knew something important. The magic she had found would remain in her heart forever. Each night, when she looked at the stars, she remembered the lessons of the bridge: courage, hope, and the power of dreams. When she returned home, she shared her story with others. Children listened wide-eyed, inspired to find their own bridges of starlight. Adults, too, were reminded of dreams they had once believed impossible. And though the bridge could not be seen by everyone, its magic lived on in every heart that dared to hope. From that night on, Ellen became known as the Keeper of the Starlight, guiding anyone who sought courage to follow their dreams. And sometimes, when the valley was quiet and the moon hung full, the villagers claimed they could see a faint shimmer across the hills, a reminder that the Bridge of Starlight waits for those brave enough to walk it. Moral of the story: courage and hope can carry us across even the most uncertain paths. Dreams become real when we face our fears and believe in ourselves. The lantern in the forest deep within the whispering woods, where sunlight barely reached the ground and shadows danced between ancient trees. There was a legend of a lantern that never went out. Villagers spoke of it in hushed tones, claiming it guided lost travelers safely home, no matter how dark the forest became. A curious boy named Elias had always been fascinated by the stories. He had grown up hearing tales of brave wanderers, enchanted creatures, and hidden wonders among the trees. One evening, when the forest was bathed in moonlight, Elias decided he would find the lantern himself. He packed a small satchel with bread, water, and a notebook to record his adventures. As he entered the forest, the wind whispered softly through the leaves, as if urging him forward. Birds chirped faintly, and owls observed silently from their perches. Hours passed, and the forest grew darker. Elias began to worry, but he remembered the stories. The lantern always appeared to those who truly needed it. To those who were brave and kind, he pressed onward, calling out softly to the trees and the wind, offering greetings as he walked. Suddenly, a faint glow appeared in the distance. Elias's heart leaped. Could this be the legendary lantern? He ran toward the light, and as he approached, he noticed it was not just a lantern, it was suspended in midair, hovering above a clearing, surrounded by fireflies that glimmered like tiny stars. As he drew closer, a soft voice spoke. "Why have you come, child?" Elias looked around, but saw no one. "I want to see the lantern," he replied. "I want to know its secret." "The lantern has no secret," the voice said gently. "It shines for those who carry light in their hearts. But beware, it reveals what you most need, not always what you wish for." Elias frowned. "What do you mean?" Before he could ask more, the lantern floated toward him, its glow growing warmer. Shadows stretched and twisted around the clearing, forming shapes that looked like monsters, thorny vines, and shadowy figures. Elias felt a shiver of fear, but he remembered the voice's words. "The lantern reveals what you most need." He took a deep breath and stepped forward. "I'm not afraid," he whispered. "I need courage." The shadows wavered, then transformed. Instead of monsters, they became visions of his past fierce times. He had been too shy to speak. Moments he had run from challenges. The lantern's light shone brighter, and Elias felt warmth spread through him. He realized that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the choice to move forward despite it. He raised his hand, touching the lantern. It pulsed in response, filling the clearing with golden light. The fireflies swirled around him, creating patterns that told stories of bravery, kindness, and hope. Elias felt himself growing stronger, braver, and more confident than ever before. Suddenly, the lantern lifted higher and spoke again. "Courage is not given. It is discovered. You have found it, and now you may carry it with you." Elias nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. "I understand. I will remember." As he left the clearing, the lantern slowly faded into the night sky, its light scattering like 1,000 tiny stars. The forest, once dark and mysterious, now seemed alive and welcoming. Birds sang, leaves rustled with joy, and even the wind seemed to hum a gentle tune. When Elias returned to the village, he shared his tale with everyone. The villagers listened in awe, inspired by his bravery and the magic of the lantern. They realized that the true power of the forest's light was not in its glow, but in the courage it inspired in those who sought it. From that day on, whenever someone felt afraid or uncertain, Elias would guide them to the edge of the Whispering Woods, reminding them of the lantern's lesson that courage, like light, shines brightest when discovered within oneself. And at night, when the forest was quiet and still, some claimed they could see a faint glow flickering deep among the trees, a reminder that the lantern in the forest was always watching, waiting to guide those who dared to seek it. Moral of the story: true courage comes from within. Facing your fears, even when it's difficult, reveals the light in your heart. The Garden of Echoes. In a quiet village surrounded by misty mountains, there was a secret garden hidden behind tall, twisting ivy walls. The villagers whispered that the garden was magical, for it did not grow ordinary flowers or plants. Instead, it grew echoes of laughter, whispers, songs, and even forgotten dreams. No one knew who tended the garden. Some said it had always been there, growing silently for centuries. Others claimed that only those with pure hearts could find it. One spring morning, a curious girl named Myra stumbled upon the garden while chasing a butterfly. She pushed aside the ivy and gasped. The garden shimmered with colors that seemed to dance in the sunlight, and the air carried faint sounds, giggles of children, soft lullabies, and voices she thought she had never heard before. "Hello," Myra called, her voice trembling. The garden responded, echoing her words back softly, but layered with 1,000 tones of joy, sorrow, and wonder. She realized she was not alone. The garden was alive, listening and remembering. Myra stepped carefully along the winding paths. Each step triggered a new sound. The rustle of an unseen wind carried the echoes of a story told long ago. A ripple in a pond repeated a lullaby sung by a mother to her child, and tiny flowers whispered secrets of the night sky. She noticed a small stone pedestal in the center, and on it rested a tiny silver bell. When Myra touched it, the echoes became louder, forming a melody so beautiful that it made her eyes water. It was the combined song of everyone who had ever laughed, loved, or dreamed. Suddenly, a gentle voice spoke. "Every echo you hear is a memory. Every sound you feel is a story. This garden grows because people remember." Myra looked around, amazed. "Can I help it grow?" she asked. The voice chuckled like wind in the trees. "Yes, if you carry your memories here and share them with care. The garden needs hearts like yours." From that day on, Myra visited the garden every morning. She whispered her joys and fears, sang songs she had learned from her grandmother, and remembered the moments that mattered most. Slowly, the garden bloomed brighter, richer, and louder. Other children discovered it too, and soon the garden was alive with a symphony of echoes from every visitor. One afternoon, Myra noticed a shadowed corner where echoes struggled to be heard. She knelt down and listened. There were memories of sadness, fears unspoken, and dreams forgotten. Myra sang softly to them, offering kindness and attention. The echoes responded, growing strong and vibrant, filling the once quiet corner with harmony. News of the garden spread, though few could find it without pure intentions. Villagers who did visit felt peace like they had never known. Their laughter returned, their stories came alive, and even the oldest memories seemed to bloom again. Myra realized something profound. The garden thrived not just because of her, but because everyone who cared for it, who remembered and shared, became a part of its magic. Each echo connected them, all past, present, and future into a tapestry of sound, light, and love. As Myra grew older, she became the guardian of the Garden of Echoes, teaching new generations the importance of remembering, sharing, and listening. And on quiet nights, when the stars hung low and the world felt still, the garden's echoes would rise. A reminder that no memory is ever truly lost, and every story deserves to be heard. Moral of the story: memories and stories have power. By sharing them with care, we create a world filled with connection, love, and magic. The Whispering Library in the heart of the town of Lumeria, there stood an ancient library unlike any other. Its doors were carved with swirling patterns that seemed to move when no one was looking, and the windows shimmered like liquid glass. Villagers said the library could talk, but only to those who listened carefully. Inside lived a quiet boy named Theo. He loved books more than anything else in the world. He would spend hours wandering between the tall shelves, touching the spines and listening to the whispers that seemed to float through the air. One evening, as twilight painted the town in shades of purple and gold, Theo heard a voice clearer than any whisper before. "Seek the story that has been forgotten." He looked around. The library was quiet, except for the soft rustling of pages. "Which story?" he asked aloud. "The story that carries the key to tomorrow," the voice replied. Theo was intrigued. He wandered deeper into the library than ever before. The shelves grew taller, the aisles narrower. Books with gilded covers, dusted with golden powder, glimmered under the faint light, but none seemed to hold the story he was looking for. Finally, he reached a hidden corner, behind a wall of dusty tomes. There lay a single book with a plain cover, bound in deep blue leather. It pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. Theo opened it, and words began to appear on the pages, forming sentences as if the book was alive. The story told of a village threatened by a shadow that stole dreams. People had forgotten to believe in their imagination, and as a result, the shadow grew stronger each day. But there was hope. A child who dared to listen, to read, and to share the story with others could defeat the shadow and restore light. Theo realized with a start that the story was speaking to him. He read aloud the words, each syllable ringing like a bell. The library vibrated gently, and he felt the presence of countless past readers supporting him. But the shadow did not remain still. It appeared as a dark mist, curling round the shelves, threatening to smother the light. Theo's heart raced. He remembered the words from the book. The story is not complete until it is shared. He ran through the library, calling to anyone who would listen. He read the story aloud to the empty chairs, to the shelves, to the wind slipping through the windows. As he read, the shadow hissed and shrank, unable to withstand the power of imagination and belief. By dawn, the shadow vanished entirely. The library glowed with warm, golden light, brighter than it ever had before. Theo realized that the forgotten story had not only saved the village, but had awakened the library itself. Every book now whispered and hummed with life, carrying their stories far and wide. The villagers soon discovered the change. Children ran to the library, eager to hear the living stories. Adults paused, listening to tales that reminded them of their childhood dreams. And Theo, once quiet and alone, became the guardian of the library's secrets, teaching others the importance of listening, reading, and sharing the magic of stories. At night, when the library was silent and the town asleep, Theo could still hear the whispers. Some spoke of adventures, others of love, and some of distant lands and skies. And every whisper reminded him of one truth: stories are alive, and they grow stronger when shared with hearts that listen. Moral of the story: stories have power only when they are heard and shared. Imagination and belief can overcome even the darkest fears. The cloud catcher above the quiet town of Windmere, there lived a boy named Felix who had an unusual gift. While other children chased butterflies or played in the streams, Felix spent his days on the hilltops, gazing at the clouds. He didn't just watch them, he caught them. Felix carried a net woven from silver threads, gifted by his grandmother, who whispered that it could trap clouds the way one traps dreams. Whenever a cloud floated by, Felix would toss the net and capture it gently, placing it in a jar. Some clouds were soft and white, fluffy like cotton candy. Others were streaked with pink and gold at sunrise. The villagers thought Felix was strange. "Why waste your time with clouds?" they asked. "They're just water and wind." But Felix knew better. Each cloud held memories, wishes, and emotions of the world below. Some were happy clouds, carrying laughter from children at play. Others were sad clouds, heavy with tears from those who cried alone. Felix spent hours listening to the whispers of each cloud, learning their stories. One day, a storm rolled over the mountains. Dark clouds swirled and rumbled angrily, growing heavier than any Felix had ever seen. The winds howled, and rain pelted the town. People rushed indoors, fearing the storm would ruin their homes and crops. Felix climbed the hill, his silver-threaded net in hand. He could see the storm cloud above, trembling with fury. "Please," he whispered, "let me help you." The cloud shuddered and spoke in a voice like distant thunder. "I cannot calm myself. I am full of the sadness and anger of everyone who feels powerless." Felix's heart ached. He thought of all the children who had cried in secret, all the farmers who feared for their fields, all the lonely hearts hidden behind closed doors. He closed his eyes and began to hum a gentle melody, a tune his grandmother had sung to him when he was afraid. The storm cloud hesitated, then wavered. The song spread into its edges, softening its dark gray and streaks of silver. Felix reached out with his net and carefully trapped the cloud, holding it as if it were fragile glass. He didn't keep it for long. Instead, he released it slowly, whispering words of hope and courage into the wind. The storm broke apart into smaller, lighter clouds, drifting gently over the valley. Rain fell softly, nourishing the fields without flooding them. Sunshine peeked through, creating rainbows that stretched across the sky. The villagers stepped outside, amazed. "It's the most beautiful sky we've ever seen," they whispered. Children laughed and pointed at the rainbow, and even the adults felt their hearts lighten. From that day on, Felix became the town's cloud catcher. Whenever clouds grew too heavy, he would climb the hills and hum his soothing songs. Whenever sorrow and fear threatened to overwhelm the town, He would gently guide the clouds, reminding the skies and the people that there was always hope. The villagers learned to watch the clouds differently. They no longer dismissed them as mere water and wind. They listened to the soft whispers carried on the breeze, realizing that the sky, like their hearts, could hold joy, sadness, and every emotion in between. Felix grew older, but he never stopped catching clouds. He taught other children how to listen to the whispers of the sky, how to hum songs of hope, and how to release clouds with care. Together, they made the sky a canvas of kindness and memory, filled with colors and melodies that touched everyone below. And when the night came, Felix would lie on the hilltop, watching the stars twinkle above, thinking, clouds, stars, songs, they all carry pieces of us. And when we care for them, they care for us in return. Moral of the story: every cloud, like every feeling, deserves care. By listening and spreading kindness, we can lighten the heaviest burdens and bring beauty to the world. The painter of the sky high above the hills, past the meadows and forests, there was a little cottage on the edge of the clouds. In it lived a quiet young artist named Solon. Unlike other painters who used paper or canvas, Solon painted the sky itself. Every morning, when the sun was still hiding, Solon dipped his brushes into jars of light. Some jars glowed with the soft pink of dawn, others shimmered with golden yellow, and some sparkled with violet and blue. With careful strokes, Solon brushed colors across the heavens, creating the sunrise. The world below never saw Solon at work, but they marveled at his art each morning. Children would wake up early to watch the sky bloom with colors, pointing at the swirls of orange and the streaks of crimson. Farmers smiled at the warm light guiding their day. Travelers whispered, "Look at the beauty above us." Solon loved his work, though he often felt lonely. His only companions were the jars of color and a small bird named Nera, who perched by his window. One day, while painting the sunrise, Solon noticed something strange. A patch of sky remained gray no matter how much color he brushed on it. He tried dipping into brighter yellows, deeper reds, even the shimmering blues, but nothing worked. Worried, he turned to Nera. "Why won't the sky take the color?" The bird tilted her head. "Maybe the sky is waiting for something else." That night, Solon stayed awake, gazing at the stars. He wondered if he was missing something. As the first light of dawn approached, he picked up his brush, ready to try again. But his heart felt heavy. "Perhaps my art isn't enough anymore," he whispered. Then, from below, he heard a sound, soft and faint, but rising. It was the laughter of children waking early, waiting for the sunrise. He heard a mother humming to her baby, and a farmer's hopeful whistle. Their voices rose like music carried by the wind. Solon gasped. The sky doesn't only need paint, it needs the colors of the people's hearts. So, instead of dipping his brush into jars, he listened. He painted with their laughter, their songs, their hopes and dreams. With every stroke, the gray patch melted away, replaced by a brilliant glow unlike anything before, shades of warmth that shimmered with life itself. That day, the sunrise was so radiant that travelers stopped on the roads, villagers clasped their hands, and children danced in the fields. Everyone felt brighter, as though the sky carried their joy back down to them. From then on, Solon changed his way of painting. He still used his jars of light, but he also listened to the world below. When people shared kindness, the mornings blazed with golden brilliance. When they shared stories, the sunsets filled with purples and pinks. And when they sang together, the stars at night shone with extra sparkle. Solon was no longer lonely. Though he lived high in the clouds, he carried the voices of the earth in his heart. And whenever someone looked up at the sky, they felt as if it had been painted just for them. Nearer chirped happily one morning as the horizon glowed with new colors. "You've found the secret, haven't you?" Solon smiled, dipping his brush into a jar of dawn. "Yes, the sky is never empty. It holds the colors of every dream, every song, and every act of love below." And so, each day, the sky became the greatest canvas in the world, painted not by one artist alone, but by the hopes of everyone who lived beneath it. Moral of the story: beauty is created not by one person alone, but by the hopes, dreams, and kindness shared by many. The clockmaker's secret: in the center of a cobblestone town stood a curious little shop. Its windows glimmered with golden gears, shiny springs, and clocks of every shape and size. Some were tall and grand, chiming every hour with deep notes, while others were small enough to fit in a pocket, ticking softly like whispers. The shop belonged to Master Orion, the town's beloved clockmaker. His beard was silver like moonlight, his spectacles round as coins, and his hands always smelled faintly of oil and wood polish. Children adored him because his clocks were not just ordinary machines, they held secrets. When a child received one of Master Orion's clocks, they would often find something special: a clock that played their favorite lullaby, or one that glowed softly like a nightlight when they were afraid. Nobody knew how he made them so personal, but the children were sure he had magic in his fingertips. One evening, just before sunset, a little girl named Lila entered the shop. She loved clocks, but had never owned one. Her family was poor, and her shoes were worn thin from walking. She pressed her nose against a glass case where a small golden pocket watch ticked like a heartbeat. "Do you like that one?" Master Orion asked gently. Lila nodded shyly. "It sounds alive." The old man smiled. "Every clock carries a secret. Would you like to know this one's?" Lila's eyes widened. "Yes, please." Orion picked up the pocket watch and placed it in her hands. "This clock does not just tell time, it listens. Whenever you feel lonely, whisper your worries to it. At the right moment, it will give the answer you need." "But I can't pay for it," Lila said, lowering her head. Orion leaned close and whispered, "Some clocks are not bought, they are chosen, and this one has chosen you." Lila's heart leaped with joy. She thanked him and ran home, clutching the watch tightly. That night, when she lay in bed, she whispered to it, "I'm scared I'll never be special." The watch ticked softly, steady and calm. No answer came, but she felt comforted, as if it was listening. Days passed. Lila carried the watch everywhere. She whispered her hopes, her fears, her dreams into it. Still, it only ticked. She began to wonder if the clockmaker had only told her a story. Then, one afternoon, when the town square was crowded, a terrible thing happened. The great bell tower in the center of town stopped. Its mighty hands froze, and the sound that guided the villagers every day went silent. Without it, farmers didn't know when to water crops, merchants didn't know when to open shops, and children didn't know when to return home. Everyone turned to Master Orion, but the old man looked troubled. "This is no ordinary break," he said. "Something has disturbed the flow of time." That night, Lila sat by her window, clutching her golden watch. "What can I do?" she whispered. "I'm just a little girl." For the first time, the watch answered. Its ticking slowed. Then a tiny voice hummed. "You are the one who listens. Go to the tower." Lila's eyes widened. She hurried to the tower, guided by moonlight. Inside, the gears were massive, stretching up like ladders to the sky. She climbed carefully, her small hands brushing against the silent metal. At the very top, she found the heart of the clock, an enormous gear glowing faintly. But it was cracked, and darkness seeped from it like smoke. "What do I do?" she whispered to the golden watch. Its tiny voice replied, "Time breaks when people stop believing in their own worth. You must remind it that every moment matters, even yours." Lila closed her eyes. She thought of all the times she felt small and unimportant. Then she thought of Master Orion's smile, the children who laughed at his clocks, the villagers who lived by their chimes. She placed her hands on the cracked gear and whispered, "I matter. My moments matter. Every life in this town matters." The gear glowed brighter. The crack sealed itself. Slowly, the entire tower began to tick again. The great bell rang out, stronger than ever before, echoing across the town. When Lila climbed down, the villagers cheered. She fixed it. Master Orion knelt beside her, tears in his eyes. "I knew the clock had chosen well. You have the heart of time within you." From then on, Lila wasn't just the poor girl with worn shoes. She was the keeper of Time's secret. She grew to help Master Orion care for all the clocks in the town, ensuring they never lost their song. And the golden pocket watch, it never left her side, ticking faithfully, reminding her that every second of her life was valuable. Moral of the story: every moment matters, no matter how small. Believing in yourself can mend even the greatest of broken things. The river that sang in a valley between rolling green hills and tall whispering forests. There flowed a river unlike any other. It was not just the clear water, or the smooth stones glistening beneath its surface that made it special. What's the sound? The villagers called it the singing river. Every morning, when the sun rose, the river hummed a gentle tune, like a lullaby. At midday, its song grew playful and bright, as if the water itself were laughing. And at night, under the stars, the river sang soft, dreamy melodies that made even the owls hush to listen. Children would sit on its banks, dipping their toes in the cool water and trying to hum along. Travelers who stopped in the valley always left with lighter hearts, carrying the river's song in their memory. But there was one rule everyone respected: never throw anger into the river. Water carries feelings, the elders said. If you cast anger or cruelty into it, the river may lose its voice. For many years, the villagers honored this wisdom. They came to the river when they were sad, and its song soothed them. They came when they were joyful, and the river made their happiness shine even brighter. Then, one summer, a boy named Darius arrived in the valley. He had traveled far with his family, and though he was strong and clever, he often grew impatient. One afternoon, while playing near the river, he lost a game to the other children. Anger rose in him like fire. Without thinking, Darius picked up a stone and shouted, "I don't care about this silly river." He threw the stone hard into the water, full of frustration. The river gasped. Its song broke off into silence. The children froze. The only sound was the ripple of the disturbed water. For the first time in living memory, the river did not sing. Word spread quickly. The villagers gathered, murmuring in worry. "The singing river is quiet. What will we do?" Guilt weighed heavily on Darius. "It's my fault," he admitted, tears welling in his eyes. "I threw anger into it." The elders knelt by the river and touched the water, listening. "The river is not gone," they said gently. "It waits for kindness to heal it." So Darius tried. He sat by the bank every day, whispering apologies. He sang songs his mother had taught him. He told the river stories about when he was little, about how he once helped a bird with a broken wing. But still, the water remained quiet. Finally, one evening, as the stars began to sparkle, Darius brought the other children with him. Together, they held hands and began to sing, not for themselves, but for the river. Their voices trembled at first, then grew strong and joyful. They sang about the beauty of the hills, the kindness of their families, the dreams they held for tomorrow. One by one, the villagers joined in. The whole valley filled with song, carried by voices full of hope. Then, softly at first, the river responded. A note rose from the water, clear and pure. Another followed, weaving between the voices. Soon, the river sang again, louder and brighter than ever. Its melody joined the villagers' song until it felt like the valley itself was alive with music. Darius smiled through his tears. It forgave me. The elders nodded. The river does not hold grudges, but it reminds us what we put into the world returns to us. Kindness makes the water sing. Anger makes it silent. From that day on, Darius became the river's greatest protector. Whenever someone felt angry, he would sit with them by the water, reminding them to let their hearts grow calm before speaking or acting. And the singing river never lost its voice again. Its songs carried through the valley, a reminder that harmony comes when hearts choose kindness. Moral of the story: the world reflects the feelings we share. When we choose kindness over anger, beauty and harmony return to us. The lantern that never went out long ago, in a small mountain village where the winters were long and the nights stretched endlessly, there was a tradition. At the center of the village stood a tall iron post with a lantern hanging from it. The villagers called it the Everlight Lantern. It was said that as long as the lantern glowed, the village would never lose its way, even in the darkest storms. No one knew who had first hung it there. Some said it was a gift from travelers long gone. Others whispered it was a blessing from the stars. Every evening, when the sun dipped behind the snowy peaks, the lantern would light itself without oil, without fire, and without touch. Children gathered around it, telling stories, while the elderly sat nearby, smiling at the glow. But one year, the snow fell heavier than ever before. Roads closed, food grew scarce, and the villagers became worried. One stormy night, the lantern's glow began to dim. For the first time in generations, the Everlight flickered. The villagers panicked. What if it goes out? How will we find hope in these long nights? A little girl named Arya stood among them, clutching her red scarf. She was small, but her heart was bright. Maybe the lantern needs help, she whispered. Her words surprised the grown-ups, but none could explain why the lantern was fading. So Arya decided to do something herself. That night, when everyone slept, she crept out into the freezing snow and walked to the lantern. The glow was weak now, barely a shimmer. She reached up and touched its cold metal. "Don't give up," she said softly. "We still need you." To her amazement, the lantern pulsed faintly, like it had heard her. A gentle voice echoed inside her mind. "I shine with the light of those who believe." But the villagers have forgotten. They fear the darkness too much to remember the light within themselves. Arya gasped. "So, if we believe, you will shine again." "Yes," the voice replied, warm as a hearth fire. "I do not burn oil or wick. I burn hope." The next morning, Arya gathered the children of the village. She told them what the lantern had said. At first, the grown-ups shook their heads. "That's just a story," they muttered. But the children believed. That night, instead of gathering in silence, the children sang. They told their happiest memories, chasing butterflies in the summer, sledding down snowy hills, helping bake bread that filled the house with sweet smells. Each story, each song, made the lantern glow brighter. The grown-ups watched in awe. Slowly, they joined in remembering birthdays, weddings, the laughter of friends who had once visited. Their fears melted, and their voices rose in warmth. The lantern flared. Light poured across the snowy streets, chasing shadows from every corner. For the first time in weeks, the village didn't feel cold. From then on, the Everlight lantern never dimmed again. not because it was magical on its own, but because the villagers learned the truth. The light had always been inside them. Arya grew older, but she always wore her red scarf, a reminder of the night she spoke to the lantern. Whenever a storm rolled in and the winds howled, she would smile at the glow and whisper, "We will never forget." And the lantern, faithful and steady, answered with its eternal flame. Moral of the story: true light comes from hope and unity. When people share joy and courage, even the darkest nights cannot win. The bridge of 1,000 colors in a valley where the mountains kissed the sky, there was a village divided by a wide, rushing river. On one side lived people who loved music and filled their days with songs. On the other side lived people who adored painting and filled their days with colors. Though the river connected them, the villagers never crossed it. They had once built a bridge, but arguments about whose way of life was better, songs or colors, caused anger. The bridge was abandoned and crumbled away, leaving only broken stones at the river's edge. Generations passed, and the two sides stopped visiting one another altogether. The singers thought the painters were messy dreamers, and the painters thought the singers were noisy and foolish. Children grew up believing the river was a border, not a bond. But not everyone agreed. On the singing side lived a boy named Erin, who loved to hum tunes as bright as the morning sun. On the painting side lived a girl named Ilara, who painted skies filled with golden birds and rivers glowing with silver fish. Though they had never met, both often sat by the river, staring across the water and wondering about the people on the other side. One summer afternoon, Erin's voice carried across the river as he sang to himself. To his surprise, he heard a laugh. Ilara was there, dipping her brush into the water. "You sound like the wind trying to whistle," she teased. Erin grinned. "And you look like you spilled the rainbow on your hands." From that day, they returned to the riverbank each evening. Erin sang as Ilara painted, and somehow their gifts blended. The river seemed to ripple in rhythm with the song, and the sky above seemed to glow brighter with her painted hues. One evening, as the sun dipped low, a strange shimmer appeared above the river. Erin's song and Ilara's brushstrokes seemed to weave together, forming a faint arch of light. They gasped as the arch grew stronger, until it stretched from one bank to the other, bridge made entirely of colors, glowing like a rainbow. Cautiously, Erin stepped onto the glowing bridge, while Ilara approached from the other side. They met in the middle, laughing with joy. The villagers, hearing the commotion, rushed to the river. Their eyes widened at the sight. At first, the singers frowned. "A painted trick," they muttered. The painters shook their heads. "A noisy spell." But as Erin began to sing and Ilara painted beside him, the bridge grew brighter, stronger, and more beautiful than before. Curiosity overcame doubt. A child from the singing side stepped onto the bridge, followed by another from the painting side. Soon, families walked across together. On the bridge, songs and colors mingled until no one could tell where one ended and the other began. From that day forward, the bridge of 1,000 colors remained, but only if the villagers worked together. Songs without colors made it fade, and colors without songs made it weak. Only harmony kept it alive. And so the people learned that neither songs nor colors were better, but that both together made life richer, brighter, and more complete. Years later, when travelers passed through the valley, they always paused in awe at the rainbow bridge shining above the river. They asked, "How did this come to be?" The villagers would smile and answer, "Because two children dared to share what they loved, instead of arguing over who was right." Moral of the story: true beauty comes when different gifts are shared together. Unity makes us stronger and brighter than we could ever be alone. The star that learned to listen high above the clouds, in the endless sea of night, lived countless stars. They twinkled, sparkled, and told stories through their light. Among them was a young star named Solara. She was brighter than many, but she had one little flaw: she loved to talk so much that she never listened. Whenever the older stars shared tales of the galaxies, Solara would interrupt. "I know that already," she would say. When the moon tried to tell the story of tides and waves, she would chatter over him. "Let me tell a better story," she insisted. The stars grew tired of her noise, and even the moon sighed. "Solara," he said gently, "you shine brightly, but you do not hear. Listening is its own kind of light." But Solara only laughed. "Why should I listen when I have so much to say?" One night, as the stars shone above the earth, Solara noticed something strange. Down below, in a little village, a child sat by a window, holding a lantern that had gone out. The child whispered wishes into the dark, but Solara was too busy humming her own songs to hear them. Then a comet streaked past. "Did you hear that?" it asked. "Hear what Solara said?" "The child's wish," the comet replied. "You missed it because you were too busy with your own voice." For the first time, Solara felt a pang of guilt. She had always wanted to help humans, but how could she if she never listened to what they needed? Determined to change, she focused on the earth below. That night, she stayed quiet. Slowly, she began to notice things she had never heard before. The soft prayers of farmers for rain, the laughter of children echoing in the streets, and even the gentle sighs of tired parents hoping for peaceful dreams. Solara's heart glowed warmer. She whispered softly, "I hear you." The next evening, when the child with the broken lantern whispered again, "I wish for a light to guide me through my dreams," Solara listened closely. Then, instead of chattering, she poured her brightness into a single, steady glow. The child's face lit up with wonder as her window filled with golden light. The other stars noticed. "Look at Solara," they murmured. "She shines more beautifully than ever." Night after night, Solara listened. She learned that every wish, every story, every voice mattered. And the more she listened, the brighter she became, until travelers on Earth began calling her the listening star. Even the moon smiled. "Do you see, Solara? Your light has grown, not because of what you said, but because of what you heard." From then on, Solara still loved to tell stories, but she always made time to listen first. And because she listened, her stories became richer, filled with the voices of others, not just her own. Children on Earth would gaze up at her, whispering secrets, dreams, and hopes, knowing she would hear them. And Solara, high above, would twinkle back softly, her light carrying the promise, "I am listening." Moral of the story: true brightness comes not from speaking the loudest, but from listening with an open heart. The whispering willow tree. At the far edge of a quiet meadow stood a willow tree unlike any other. Its branches trailed down like streams of silver-green hair, brushing against the soft grass below. The villagers called it the Whispering Willow because, on windy nights, its leaves rustled with voices that sounded almost human. Some said the tree carried the secrets of the earth. Others claimed it could listen to broken hearts and answer with gentle advice. But most people never dared to approach it. They were afraid of the unknown, and so the willow stood alone, admired from afar but never visited. Only one person truly believed in the magic of the tree, a boy named Rowan. He was small for his age, with messy curls and a habit of asking far too many questions. While others hurried past the meadow, Rowan often lingered, staring at the willow's dancing branches and wondering what it might say if only someone listened. One summer evening, after a day of teasing at school, where the older children laughed at his curiosity, Rowan wandered to the meadow with heavy steps. He sat beneath the willow, hiding his face in his hands. "Why can't I fit in?" he whispered. The leaves above him trembled. A soft voice drifted through the branches, gentle as a lullaby, because you are not meant to fit in, but to stand out. Rowan gasped, looking up. Who said that? The willow swayed, and the voice came again. I am old, older than the hills, older than the rivers. I hear every laugh, every sigh, every secret carried by the wind. And I hear you, little one. You are braver than you think. From that night on, Rowan visited the willow often. He poured out his thoughts, his fears, his hopes, his endless questions. And always, the tree whispered back with patience and wisdom. Why do people hide their feelings? Rowan asked. Because they are afraid of being seen. But true strength comes from honesty. Why do the stars shine only at night? So that light can be found even in darkness. Why am I so different? Because difference is the beginning of greatness. Word of Rowan's strange friendship spread through the village. Some mocked him even more, calling him the boy who talks to trees. Others shook their heads, whispering he was odd. But Rowan didn't mind anymore, because the willow gave him courage. One autumn evening, a great storm struck the meadow. The sky raged with thunder, and the wind bent the willow nearly to the ground. Rowan ran to the tree, clinging to its trunk. Hold on, he cried. The branches whipped violently, yet through the roar of the storm, the willow whispered, Stand firm, little one, as I do. Strength is not in resisting the storm, but in bending without breaking. When the storm passed, half the village gathered at the meadow, amazed that the willow still stood tall while other trees had fallen. Rowan, drenched but smiling, patted its trunk proudly. The villagers stared at him differently that day, not with mockery, but with respect. From then on, people began to visit the willow. At first, they stood silently beneath its branches. But soon, they, too, began to hear its whispers, gentle truths that touched their hearts. A grieving mother found comfort, a lonely child discovered hope, and even stern elders felt peace. The meadow transformed into a place of gathering. Families came to picnic beneath the willow, friends shared laughter, and neighbors spoke kindly to one another. It was as if the tree's wisdom had spread roots into their hearts. Rowan grew older, but he never stopped visiting the willow. Whenever life confused him, he listened to its whispers, and whenever others needed guidance, he led them there. The villagers who once mocked him now thanked him, for he had shared the willow's gift with them all. And so, the tree that once stood alone became the heart of the villager, reminder that listening, truly listening, can heal, guide, and unite. Moral of the story: true wisdom comes from listening with patience, kindness, and an open heart. The clockmaker's secret garden, in a bustling town where cobblestone streets echoed with the sound of horse carts and merchants calling out their wares. There lived an old clockmaker named Elias. His shop sat at the end of a narrow lane, a place filled with ticking, chiming, and worry sounds. People often visited Elias to repair their watches or buy a clock. But very few noticed something unusual about him, though his hair was silver and his hands worn with age. His eyes sparkled with a secret joy. Behind his shop, hidden behind a tall wooden fence and a rusty gate, was a secret garden. No one in the town knew it existed. By day, Elias mended clocks, but by night, he slipped into the garden, where flowers glowed faintly in the moonlight and vines whispered like old friends. In the center of this hidden paradise stood an ancient sundial, covered in moss and etched with strange symbols. The sundial was no ordinary stone. It had the power to slow down time, but only for those who used their hours wisely with kindness, creativity, and love. Elias had discovered it as a boy, when he first wandered into the garden chasing a lost kite. Since then, The garden had become his sanctuary, and the sundial his greatest teacher. But Elias worried. The people of his town hurried through their lives, always chasing coins, always complaining there wasn't enough time. They frowned at one another, ignored the poor, and forgot to play with their children. They were too busy to notice sunsets, too busy to laugh. One day, as Elias was repairing a broken pocket watch, a young girl named Clara entered his shop. She held the watch gently and said, "This belonged to my grandmother. It doesn't tick anymore. Can you fix it?" Elias studied the watch. Its gears were bent, its spring worn down. But he also saw something else in Clara's eyes, a spark of hope, the same spark he had once carried as a child. "Yes," he said kindly, "but it may take more than gears and springs. Meet me here tonight." That evening, Clara returned. Elias led her through the rusty gate into his secret garden. Her eyes widened as she saw glowing flowers, butterflies that shimmered like tiny lanterns, and the sundial gleaming faintly under the stars. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Elias nodded. "This garden holds a secret. The sundial here can gift time, but only if you promise to use it well." Clara tilted her head. "Use it how? By being kind, by noticing small wonders, by giving instead of rushing. That is how the sundial chooses who deserves its gift." Curious, Clara touched the sundial. Instantly, her pocket watch glowed. Its ticking returned, stronger than before. But something else happened too. When she looked around, she noticed the world differently. The stars seemed brighter. The wind carried music. She could hear laughter from far away, hidden in the ordinary sounds of the town. The next day, Clara shared her bread with a hungry boy in the marketplace. She helped an elderly woman carry her basket. She played with children instead of hurrying home. Each time she did, her pocket watch glowed faintly, and her days felt longer, as if hours stretched to fit all the goodness inside them. People in the town began to notice. Why does Clara always have time for everyone? They wondered. Slowly, they began following her example. A merchant paused to tell a story instead of rushing customers. A blacksmith taught a child how to forge a small trinket. Families started gathering at dusk to watch the sun set together. The sundial glowed brighter each night. Its magic spread beyond the garden, reaching into the town itself. Soon, people discovered that when they lived kindly, their days felt fuller, richer, and less hurried. Elias smiled as he watched from his garden. He knew the secret was no longer his alone. The sundial's gift was safe, because the people had finally remembered how to use their time wisely. Clara often returned to visit Elias, and together they tended the glowing flowers, planting new seeds for future children to find. She never forgot the lesson, that time is not measured in hours or clocks, but in moments of love, laughter, and kindness. And so, the town changed. Where once people rushed without joy, now they lived as if every tick of the clock was a chance to make life beautiful. Moral of the story: time feels longer and more meaningful when we fill it with kindness, creativity, and love. The lantern of the lost village, long ago, hidden deep within the green hills and misty valleys, there was a village that few maps remembered. The people of this place were kind and gentle, but they lived with a strange problem each night. When the sun set, their village would vanish into darkness. Unlike other towns that glowed with lamps or candles, the villagers' fires would mysteriously go out the moment the moon rose. Children would shiver at bedtime, clinging to their parents, because the blackness outside their windows felt alive. The grown-ups whispered stories of shadows that prowled in the night, but no one dared to wander. for the roads were swallowed by the dark. At the center of the village stood a tall, broken lantern. Its iron frame was rusted, its glass cracked, and no flame had burned inside it for generations. The elders said the lantern once held a magical fire that protected them from the darkness. But it had gone out long ago when people stopped believing in kindness and started keeping all good things only for themselves. Among the villagers lived a girl named Leora. She was small, curious, and filled with more bravery than most adults. Leora often dreamed of light, bright, warm, endless light that would chase away every shadow. She believed the lantern could shine again, though no one else did. One evening, as the village sank into its usual black silence, Leora wrapped herself in a shawl and crept toward the broken lantern. "If no one will try, then I will," she whispered. She touched the cold metal and felt a pulse, like a heartbeat. Startled, she drew back, but then she noticed a faint glow deep inside the lantern, hidden like a sleeping ember. The glow whispered to her. Kindness is the key. Leora understood. She began her mission the next morning. Instead of keeping her food to herself, she shared her bread with the hungry. When she saw an elder struggling with buckets of water, she rushed to carry them. When children argued, she taught them to play together. Each act of kindness, though small, made the ember inside the lantern flicker brighter. But shadows noticed too. That night, as the village slept, dark shapes slithered between the houses. They hissed and whispered, "Stop! The lantern must remain dead." They tried to frighten Leora with icy winds and whispering voices. But she held her courage, remembering that true kindness carried its own strength. As days turned into weeks, the lantern began to glow brighter each night. Villagers noticed the faint light, though they didn't know why. Curious, they followed Leora's example, sharing food, helping neighbors, singing songs together. With each good deed, the lantern grew warmer, until one evening, when the moon rose, it blazed with golden fire. The shadows shrieked, scattering into the hills. The village, for the first time in centuries, glowed with light. Laughter rang through the streets, and children no longer feared the night. The elders gathered around Leora, their eyes shining with pride. "You reminded us that light is born not from fire, but from kindness," they said. From that night on, the lantern never went out again. Whenever villagers grew selfish or unkind, its light would dim slightly, but together they always remembered what Leora had taught them. That the brightest flame is found in the simplest act of caring for another. And so the lost village was lost no more, for its light could be seen shining warmly across the valleys, guiding travelers and comforting all who came near. Moral of the story: true light comes from kindness. Even the smallest act of generosity can push away the deepest darkness. The Garden of Forgotten Seeds. In a quiet village, surrounded by hills and forests, there was an old wooden house at the edge of town. Behind it stretched a large garden, but not an ordinary one. This garden belonged to Grandma Elara, and people whispered that it was magical. Grandma Elara never bought seeds from the market. Instead, she collected forgotten seeds left behind, dropped, or ignored. She would say, "Every little seed deserves a chance to grow. Even the smallest has a story." Children from the village often came to see her strange garden. Unlike neat rows of carrots or beans, her garden was wild and colorful. Giant sunflowers bent to greet tiny daisies. Blue pumpkins grew beside golden corn. Flowers of every shade popped up in corners no one expected. But there was one corner of the garden that Elara always kept hidden under a wooden gate. "What's behind there?" the children would ask. Elara would smile kindly. That is the part of the garden that grows only when someone remembers. The children didn't understand. One day, a boy named Milo came to the garden. He was shy and often felt invisible. He carried a tiny pouch in his hand and showed it to Grandma Elara. Inside were 3 tiny seeds. "My grandfather gave these to me before he passed away," Milo whispered. "But I don't know what they are." Grandma Elara's eyes twinkled. "Then let's see what memory they hold." She led Milo to the secret gate and pushed it open. Behind it was bare soil, quiet and waiting. "Plant them here," she said. Milo knelt and placed the 3 little seeds into the earth. Days passed, then weeks, nothing grew. Milo grew disappointed. Maybe they were too old, he sighed. But Elara shook her head. Seeds don't only need water and soil. They need remembrance. "Tell me, Milo, what do you remember of your grandfather?" So, Milo began to share. He remembered how his grandfather whistled cheerful tunes while walking. He remembered the smell of the bread his grandfather baked. He remembered sitting on his knee, listening to stories about brave birds that traveled across oceans. The more Milo remembered, the more the soil stirred. Tiny sprouts appeared, then grew taller each day. First came a plant with leaves shaped like music notes. Each time the wind blew, they whistled the tune Milo's grandfather once hummed. Then, beside it, grew a tree whose blossoms smelled exactly like warm bread. Villagers who walked past would stop, close their eyes, and feel comforted. Finally, the tallest plant of all grew. It sprouted feathers instead of leaves, and from its branches, birds of every color perched, ready to fly. They carried stories in their songs, reminding everyone of tales long forgotten. Milo's eyes widened with joy. "It's like he's here again." Elara smiled gently. "That is the gift of memory, child. Forgotten seeds bloom when love remembers." From that day on, villagers brought Elara seeds they had kept in drawers, pockets, and boxes for years. A girl brought a seed her mother had found during a journey. A boy brought one from a necklace his sister wore. Every time, when they shared memories of loved ones, the garden filled with new wonder trees that glowed at night. Flowers that laughed softly, vines that danced in the wind. And Milo, he became the garden's caretaker when he grew older. He welcomed every child, saying the words Elara once said, "Every seed has a story, and every story deserves to grow." At night, fireflies drifted between the magical plants, and Milo could almost hear his grandfather's whistle in the air. The garden of forgotten seeds was never truly silent. It carried the voices of love, memory, and hope. Moral of the story: memories keep our loved ones alive, and when we share them, they grow into something beautiful that lights the world.